friendly exchange with a well, it was at a game this weekend, and the team, our shifts were too long, and the team we were playing they were changing on the fly, which is a very kind of unusual in our league. If you see that happening, you know you're playing against a well coached team. And I made a comment I was on the bench and I have one of my very easy to engage players next to me. You can have he's 12, but he's very mature, very nice kid. Anyway, I made the comment. I said, "Man, those guys are they're." I said something about they really change well. And I'd already had the conversation with him about his shift lengths. I asked him. I said, "So who's your favorite player?" He said, "Steven Stamkos." I said, "Oh, how long do you think his average shift length is?" And he looked at me. I said, "Just take a guess." He goes, "A minute." I said, "Okay, we'll make a note of that." I said, "How long do you think your shifts have been today?" And he smiled and he said, "A minute." I said, "Okay, we'll make a note of that." So my exchange with the parent was I had the shift times for both Steven Stamkos and this young player. So that conversation had taken place on the bench while he was waiting to go out, before I made the comment about this other team, really changes well. And the player looks up at me and with a bit of a smile and says, "So you're saying we don't?" So anyway, my point is that was an opportunity to have a little further dialogue. So last night, when you have that first 5 minutes where you're just doing the skate around, I skated up to him and I told him, I said, "Hey, I got a new nickname for you." And he looked at me. I said, "I'm going to now call you Minute." But anyway, my point is there's some things with technology that we can do within reason, and knowing that kids have a very short attention span, so you can't send them, 5 minute clips of video. But anyway, my point is I think we can interact with our players to make in a way that will make the time we do have with them on the ice more valuable. Just a thought.
Tim, I don't know if you listened to Gardner McDougall or not, but
Yeah.
one of the biggest issues that he was able to change was shift length. They were over a minute long, and he wanted them closer to 50 seconds.
Yeah.
And they were able to do that. He wanted them to play a faster game. So shift lengths to me are a cardinal. So you're talking about them, and I want to be polite here, but I don't pussyfoot about them. And whether it's parents and players, I think at certain ages, you can have a minute and a half, 2 minute shifts. But certain levels of competition, if you want to be a competitive player and an elite level player, you have to have shorter shifts, sorry. And shift
Speaking.
length, to me, this completely disrupts the chemistry of the team because the best players stay out too long. And coaches allow that. The best players stay out too long and take bad penalties. Coaches allow that. That is what
Speaking
we
from
got.
my experience as a coach and bench management, that's been the most difficult thing for me to deal with as a coach. And if all you can do is get your kids to change on a whistle, you have no prayer of having short shift lengths. So you can't just say in the pregame speech, "All right, boys, we want to concentrate on having some short shift lengths tonight." Because if you look at practices, the coaches will run a drill like a you know do the 3-0 breakout or 2-0 entry drill, and they'll let that group of kids play for 2-3 minutes, and then they'll change up and put the next group in. So if a kid's used to playing 2 or 3 minutes at practice, and you tell him in the pregame speech we're going to keep our shift short, you'll be lucky if the shift is now a minute 30. So that's not that's not good enough. Everybody says you have to practice like you want to play, and that's the truth. But my observation is that we don't generally practice at the youth level like we should play. So and you it so we have a team that has long shift lengths. If we concentrate, if we made it a priority, which it should be now, made it a priority, it's something that we need to ingrain in every practice going forward, and reinforce it in every game. Our team doesn't know how to change on the fly. When I looked up Stamkos' shift lengths for this player, I forget. I think he played. The stats said he played 21 games in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and 60% of his average shift length was 41 seconds, and 60% of his shift changes were done on the fly. Anyway, my point is we have to ingrain it in everything we do. So if you're running a small area game in practice or a 2-on-0 entry, whatever it is, if you want the kids to learn what it's like to play a 45 or 50-second shift, I don't know any other way to do it.
The best was, I heard a story just recently. I knew about it, I'd known about it before, but when Mike Keeney was coaching the Rangers, he had Alexei Kovalov on the bench, and Kovalov was skating and shoot him off one time when he asked him, he's telling him to change on the fly, and he gave him the old, no, not yet. And then he proceeded to not let him off the ice for almost like 6 minutes after that. and Kovalov learned his lesson. He says, yeah, I learned the lesson just based off the fact that I was so exhausted and I just couldn't even function. I think, to Wally, to your point, I almost rather have my best players over taking all my ice time than my worst. So it is hard. It's just, sometimes it is a cultural thing. It's a way, and I think it's a matter of respect too, right? If your teammates respect each other, they're going to respect the time that they are allocated on the ice to perform, and they're going to give their other teammates an opportunity to jump in there as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like the saying, "You haven't taught until they've learned." And I just know it's much easier said than done. It really would take, or it does take considerable effort to teach the kids how to play the right way. There's one other thought I had, but it escapes me at the moment. It's all right.
By the way, you can find that shift out on YouTube. It's great. The NHL actually posted its whole 5-minute shift. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, and you may know this better than I, that he actually scored at the very end there to end the shift. Like, that's how he got off the ice. He finally scored the goal.
Yeah, the story when Keenan, I was at an event where Keenan was telling the story, and it was great because you could even see Mike Keenan getting mad telling the story. Like, he was so mad that the player had success after all of that, right? And it's like, damn it, he didn't learn anything. He just said, "Oh, that's a great shift for me," So, but I think it's just funny at the highest levels, and it's funny. We interviewed Danny Briere last night for a podcast I do, and we referred to almost a guy like Kovalov about, it's so hard to tame these elite athletes because they want to be on the ice. They think they can go further than they can. They think they can take that ice time and use it to their advantage. And you, as a coach, is trying to manage that time and manage that player. But sometimes, you got to allow the player to find that and let their instincts kick in, especially when you have these elite athletes. So yeah, I would recommend the video. It's a great video to watch, because I think, I forget who the Ranger announcers were, but it's got to be, one of them's got to be Sam Rosen, right? But I would imagine they're having fun with it too, knowing how long he was on the ice, for those shifts.
Yeah. And well, you bring up a good point there of like players having success, even though they're doing the wrong thing, and like how that kind of breeds bad habits of like, and trying to transfer and shift their focus to understanding like the result and the process are different. Like, or how many coaches coach to the outcome, right? Like, if someone misses the net, it goes down to the other end and the other team scores, versus maybe that was the right decision. rather than like coaching the process and the decision making rather than like the outcome.
Well,
That drives everyone wild. I know every coach is like, you're an idiot. Why are you doing it? Even though you keep having success, like it's not going to transfer to the next level, whatever it may be, and trying to change that mindset of going towards a process and not worrying about results, because if it's all about the results, we all know that eventually that catches up with you and the confidence goes and you're not able to perform at a higher level.
yeah, I'm guilty of that. The youth level. I mean, I'm always that I'm just like, I know you scored that goal, but it was just the wrong play. Like, and you've done it now 6 times because you've had success at a level that you're not going to find. I guess I can say that, but then the kid just keeps scoring. You're like, well, you're not going to have success at the next level. Well, I just did. This is the next level, and I just did it again. So it's just very hard to say, okay, well, you know what? Do what you keep doing, but I'm just trying to help you see that there are other options out here. And I think it then refers back to, you can see your teammates, right? You see a kid score the quote unquote wrong way. And his teammates are kind of like rolling their eyes, but the kid's like, listen, I just scored, look at me. So it's so much, I realize, you're talking about all different levels, but at the youth level where I primarily work at, it's trying to get players to have the confidence to do these neat things, but also to teach them that it's working here. But, I do have a crystal ball, and I'm trying to help you to understand that if you don't evolve this skill, you're not going to be able to perform this later unless you can. Right.
Well,
So
there's like that misalignment, right? Of like just time frames. Like we're preparing the player for the next level. And a lot of times, especially like parents as well, are guilty of this of like, I just want to perform at this level really high, and having that disconnect of like, we're seeing the future where we want you to be successful where you're going. You want to have success now and feel good about it now. And that might come at the expense of future success, and like how to navigate that. It's always an interesting conversation and situation to handle.
I think I got to interject because I think you're giving in. You don't coach around the best player and allow that to happen. And the best team wins. Did they win a championship? Is it about him getting to the next level? Bullshit. It's about the team winning. And that's being the best they can be. They may not win that game. But as soon as you do that, you've lost the sense of team. You've lost the respect of half the players or maybe more. And that's where the best team wins. What championships have you won by double shifting? And if you have won, what have you won? A championship. What have you taught? A bad habit. And that kid's got to come out away from sport with a life lesson. It's a team sport. And however you deal with it is part of the art of coaching. And this is something that you should write down and mentor coaches to do. I picked it up at an Alberta zone camp competition I was mentoring, and the coach of the one team had the trainer, when it reached 40 seconds, start out loud, 40, 41, from the bench so the players could hear. And until the last player came off. Now, maybe they stayed out because they couldn't get off. Maybe they had an opportunity, it was close, but you've got to go from a minute and a half to a minute 15, or 2 minutes to a minute and a half. I think at younger ages, long shifts are okay. They don't have the anaerobic power and strength to play a great tempo pace game. So shift lengths to me at the elite level, uh, they make a big difference, but not because of the outcome, because it teaches you about respect and trust in your teammates. So Okay, some different hands have gone up here. Michael, and then we'll go to Tim.
Yeah, I just want to say one of the things I've seen, and I'd love to hear, even Peter chime in a little bit too on this, is because maybe it's just the region I'm in, but there's so many teams here that have these that are lopsided with the level of player that kids, and this is just anecdotal, this is what I'm seeing on the ground, right? That kids would rather be on a winning team with selfish players than be on a team of equal ice time and lose. It's so weird. It's such a weird thing for me to experience, because I'm like, if I'm not contributing, I want nothing to. Even when I coach, if you invite me out to your practice and you don't let me contribute, I'm like, well, what the hell am I even doing here? Like, this is like, oh yeah, it's a great practice, but I had nothing to do with it. Like, I contributed nothing to the development of these kids, and it's such an odd thing that I see at that 12U, 10U level. And maybe it's because of the way the parents present it, but the kids are happy being on winning teams and are taking it because the team's winning and they're a part of that win, even though they didn't contribute to the win. I don't know. I just see that, and maybe because I'm not around, it's not a team of quote unquote elite athletes or high performing athletes. It's just a team of kids, and they just want to be around other. They just want to feel like they've won without the effort of actually contributing to the win. I don't know. That's just my anecdotal observation, I guess.
Tim?
Yeah, Wally, you had said that you used the phrase the younger levels, the shift length wasn't as important. I was just curious, what was the level? What was the age that you were considering like the younger level?
Well, I think it used to be U13. I look at the growth spurt, the maturation. Um, there's a physiological maturity. Um, Kids can play 3-minute shifts and not get tired at a certain age, but they're not playing dynamically and demandingly. So I don't know where I would start a 40-second shift. I know even with the national team, I sort of set a minute as the ceiling, and we didn't have to talk about it.
Yeah, from my experience, and I've been coaching youth hockey at the younger levels for 12 years now. At 10U and below, the shift length is not really a big deal, other than the fact you want to start to teach them the right way to play, so as they move up, it's less of a challenge for that next coach. And on the 12U team I'm associated with, none of the young men have gone through puberty yet, so their energy system is kind of like what you're describing. But I can, if we're playing against a team that changes on the fly, let's just describe it that way. So you would think their shift times are lower. They will genuinely beat us. Now that may be correlation, not causation, but yeah, in my experience, um, our goal, I would think, it would be for closer to that 50-second or a minute anyway. We're higher than that, so we'll one step at a time in the right direction. But that's been my experience.
No, you're absolutely right, and it's just like every coach has got their group, and you have to manage behaviors and mindsets and attitudes, and how you deal with shift length is your thing. If that coach got the team to buy in and change shorter, faster shifts, they're probably practicing shorter, faster. And it all correlates. You're going to practice how you play. Maybe they had wonderful birth dates in terms of being 8 months more mature. Who knows? But there's so many factors here. But shift length, to me, I don't look at it for Yeah, I look at it for physiology first. I watched a Pee Wee Championship, that's U13, 5 years ago, and one team was double shifting the centers. And it was after the second period. I said to the person next to me, they're going to lose because in the third period they're dead. That's where I'm talking. Hockey at that age level is an aerobic game, not an anaerobic game. The bantam level and midget levels, it becomes anaerobic. That's where there's that physiological maturation. But go ahead, Phil.
I guess that's me. The only point I wanted to kind of bring up and make is with everything that everyone's talking about as far as like shift lengths, getting players to buy in, how much, and I guess it's more, I guess it's maybe more of a rhetorical question, is how much time is spent on creating and developing trust between your players and the coaches. And that's at every level. I mean, any level I've coached, I mean, from youth hockey through to college. And that's been a priority for me, is finding ways to establish trust. And also was alluded to a little bit when we were talking about youth hockey, about, the time you don't have to spend with the kids, and that, I mean, when I coached youth hockey, I would give the kids little homework assignments, and they were nothing crazy, nothing too difficult, but I would ask them things like, I want you, next practice, everybody, tell me who your hero is in your life. Doesn't have to be hockey, just who's a hero for you. So I would get that back. Then I would do things like, what's your favorite food? Things like, what do you like to do when you're not playing hockey? This would be throughout the season. And from that, you get a sense of who these kids are, what's important to them, and then individually how you can push certain buttons, right? Because there's some kids who their hero is going to be, a Cale Makar or a Sidney Crosby, and they're going to be hockey driven, hockey athletic focus and everything they do. So that helps you figure out how to reach that boy or girl that's on your team in youth hockey. The same thing with the kid who says, I like to have fun. It's great to be with my friends. My parents are my heroes because they're always there to help me. What makes that kid tick. So creating that idea of what is the makeup of your team at any level, and then developing a measure of trust. That's where you get your buy-in. That's where, once the kids trust you, you tell them to do a 40-second shift, they'll do a 40-second shift because they will trust you. But you have to create that, and there's things you can do. And I always like to have them do a little homework assignment and write it, because honestly, kids